A belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. When you switch that around, you become a creator of your world, and you start saying, my thinking and my feeling is changing an outcome in my life. Now, if you're creating from the field, you actually don't go anywhere to get it. You actually draw it to you. I just had this one thought, and the thought was, the power that made the body heals the body. I think if you're working in a relationship, something is not clicking, something is not right.
New York Times best-selling author and one of the most sought-after speakers in the world. He's lectured and given advanced workshops in more than 30 countries across 5 continents, all with the aim of helping people better understand and unlock the power of their mind. Dr. Joe Dispenza.
All beliefs are created from past experiences. And a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwired in your brain. And a hardwired set of circuits is an automatic, unconscious program. So we have a lot of beliefs about things that we're not even conscious of.
And they're not been tested. We don't know if they're true.
We don't know if they're true. We've actually, in fact, made them up.
Yeah.
Your body is your unconscious mind. In a sense, if you're sitting down and you start thinking about some future worst-case scenario that you're conjuring up in your mind, and you begin to feel the emotion of that event, your body doesn't know the difference between the event that's taking place in your world, outer world, and what you're creating by emotion or thought alone. So most people then, they're constantly reaffirming their emotional states. So when it comes time to give up that emotion, they can say, I really want to do it, but really the body is stronger than the mind because it's been conditioned that way. So the servant now has become the master. And the person all of a sudden, once they step into that unknown, they'd rather feel guilt and suffering because at least they can predict it. Being in the unknown is a scary place for most people because the unknown is uncertain. People say to me, well, I can't predict my future. I'm in the unknown, and I always say the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? The act of rehearsing them mentally, closing your eyes, and rehearsing the action.
Rehearsing the reaction of what you want, or the action of what
the action of what you want. By closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing some action. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between what you're imaging and what you're experiencing in 3D world. So then you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now, your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, priming it that way, the hardware becomes a software program. And who knows, you just may start acting like a happy person. And then I think the hardest part is to teach our body emotionally what the future will feel like ahead of the actual experience. So what does that mean? You can't wait for your success to feel empowered. You can't wait for your wealth to feel abundant. You can't wait for your new relationship to feel love or your healing to feel whole. I mean, that's the old model of reality of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when we feel better inside of us, we pay attention to whoever or whatever caused it. But what that means then is that from the Newtonian world is that most people spend their whole life living in lack, waiting for something to change out there.
What do you mean the Newtonian world?
The Newtonian world is all about the predictable. It's all about predicting a future. But the quantum model of reality is about causing an effect. The moment you start feeling abundant and worthy, you are generating wealth. The moment you're empowered and feel it, you're beginning to step towards your success. The moment you start feeling whole, your healing begins. And when you love yourself and you love all of life, you'll create an equal. And now you're causing an effect. And I think that's the difference between living as a victim in your world, saying, I am this way because of this person or that thing or this experience. They made me think and feel this way. When you switch that around, you become a creator of your world. And you start saying, my thinking and my feeling is changing an outcome in my life. And now, that's a whole different game, and we start believing more that we're creators of reality. When we look at our own personal goals and dreams, I think that when we begin to piece together something that we want to have happen to ourselves in the future, that there's two elements that we have to develop. The first element is called intention. And because we all share the same brain and we all have the same parts in place, intention is naturally a process that we go through when we want to begin to get clear on what we want. So getting clear on what we want is whether it's success with a business, success with a relationship, success with a personal adventure or personal endeavor. What does that look like to a person? What is the dream that they want to begin to embark upon? And the clearer they are on it, the more direct they fine-tune the instruments to that destiny. And the other element has to do with surrender. That element of surrender means that it's not going to happen exactly the way you want it to happen. It's got to happen in a way that's unusual and unpredictable and a little bit outside of your conventional understanding. That's called evolution, because if it happens in the predictable sense, then it's already a known bit of information and it's difficult for us to say that it's a new experience. So wealth then, or success, happens right outside the reach of what we know. And we have to begin to create this dance or this balance between intention and surrender. When we surrender to an idea, it means that we're giving it up to a greater force or a greater mind. We are letting the quantum field of potentials, God, the universe, whatever people call it, the greater mind, begin to orchestrate events equal to our intention. So if we have our conscious mind directed on something, our subconscious mind will lead us there. Now, most people, they get lost at this point because they use their senses to determine reality. So they may say, I want success, and I want wealth, and I want a breakthrough. And they put a small amount of work into change. And then, the next day, they're checking their bank account to see if anything's changed or anything's happened. And of course, that is a very minute way of addressing a very larger picture. We can't be fooled by our senses. We have to begin to see then that there is a progression of forces that take place over time, and our present reality was created from our thoughts from our past reality. The details about the outcome should only be the details you're focusing on. How that comes about, you have to loosen up your beliefs, you have to loosen up your rigidity, you have to loosen up your mind to an outcome that you haven't even thought about yet. Because if you've thought about it,
Right.
it should have already happened, right?
Right.
So there's got to be this way in which we are open to possibilities that we're not really, we haven't entertained. If we don't do that, then we're forcing the square peg into the round hole. So then the clear intention tends to be a very important element that we have to get down. And the more coherent the brain, the more clear the signal for that intention. So with intention and attention, we could actually make thought more real than anything else. Now, what is that? You're saying, what would it be like to be wealthy? What would it be like to be abundant? What would it be like to have all my needs met? What would it be like to have more than I need? What would I do if I had everything I ever wanted? The answer always is the same. You start giving stuff away. Because if an abundant person is truly abundant, why would they hold on? They would say, I'm not in lack. There's more for everybody. Okay? Turns out, though, that the signal sent out isn't enough. You're going to have to draw the experience back to you. And so
you're sending the signal out to,
it's coherent brain,
financial freedom,
whatever
abundance, all these different things.
Right. Whatever that is for you. Whatever that is for you.
You're putting that out there with your signal, with the intention and the attention.
Right.
And then how do you draw it to you?
So
in the physical world,
in the physical world, you got to go get it. You got to do something. This is the plane of demonstration. You got to go get it, and when you're in lack until it occurs, right?
But I'm hearing you say there's a way to not chase but attract.
All right. So if you're creating from the field instead of from matter, right? There's a very strong possibility that you'll shorten the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it. And when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that future that you want to experience, now if you're creating from the field, you actually don't go anywhere to get it. You actually draw it to you. So here comes the synchronicities, the serendipities, the coincidences, the opportunities, and they come out of nowhere. And you say, I don't understand. I didn't do anything. Well, you changed your energy. And so then the other element is a coherent heart, right? And the heart has a magnetic signature. And the magnetic signature is what draws reality to us, right? So you combine that clear intention with a coherent brain. Now here's the key. This takes practice.
Yes.
Because the person who's living in lack is usually unworthy, is usually insecure, is usually in their past, they're usually frustrated, they're usually impatient, they're usually resentful because nothing's changing out there because it's taking too long. Well, everything takes a lot of time when you do matter to matter, right? So then if you teach them, okay, we know all about that. We know the story behind that. We know what your parents told you about money, all that other. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But now let's do something that would be really cool. Let's write down the feelings of how you would feel if that future happened, and you're going to have to feel that feeling before it occurs. So now, okay, what does an abundant person feel? Pretty much free, a lot of freedom.
Peace, excited, joyful.
In love with life, grateful to be alive, abundant. Okay, now let's practice feeling those. Turns out when you're feeling those other emotions like resentment and impatience and frustration, you're stepping on the gas pedal, you're turning on the sympathetic nervous system, and you're stepping on the brake. At the same time, which is you're angry, you're frustrated, but the fight or flight nervous system says run, fight, or hide, and you're sitting in a Zoom meeting and your neck is pulsating is because the heart is beating against the closed system, right? You're not using it in an adaptive way. So the heart starts firing out of order. It starts firing incoherently, and incoherent waves cancel each other out. It's called destructive interference, and then we stop trusting our future. Energy leaves the heart. Energy leaves the brain, energy leaves the heart, and you can't get in touch with the feeling of your future because in survival, which those are hormones of stress, all those emotions, in survival it's not a time to create, right? It's time to run, fight, and hide. Okay, so we gotta lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want. The habit of doing it that way for something greater to occur. Okay.
And what happens if we try to create from survival emotions?
It just takes a long time. You'll just force it.
Little steps at a time.
You'll force it. Yeah. You'll force it. You'll fight for it. You'll compete for it. You'll manipulate. You'll cheat. You'll lie. You'll do anything to get what you want because that's what matter does when it's trying to change matter. And everybody's playing that game, right? Everybody's trying to accumulate the most amount of things.
Right.
Okay, so that's what abundance means to certain people. Get as many things as you can. Okay, you want that? Not a problem. But let's learn the formula of how to create, right?
Yes.
So then you'd have to feel those emotions before the experience occurred. And if you understood that you could dissociate all of your attention from this three-dimensional reality and have no attention on anything known, and understand it's the field that creates matter, not matter that emits the field. And if you could get to that place and change your energy with a clear intention and elevated emotion, your heart starts beating in this beautiful rhythm like a drum. We've measured it so many times. And when that occurs, the next thing that happens, the heart informs the brain, it's safe to create now. So the person relaxes into the present moment. And then we see this, like if you took a big sheet, and a blanket and you went like that, the energy of the heart actually informs the brain to move into these beautiful, elegant states of alpha brainwave patterns, coherent alpha. And that's saying, what's the next dream? What's the next opportunity you want to experience? That's a state of creation. So now you have a Wi-Fi signal. You got a coherent brain, that's a directive, that's a signal out, and you got this coherent heart. That's what draws it to us. I will never work in a relationship, and I don't think anybody should work in a relationship. I think if you're working in a relationship, something is not clicking, something is not right. But if you bring your best, and the person that you're with brings their best, and you celebrate your life together, then there's constructive interference, there's growth, there's energy. If you're not at your best and you show up, more than likely you're going to pick someone or something apart. And it's better that you remove yourself for a period of time and get back into your heart and present yourself at your best. And so If you're not there and you need a mirror or a reflection, then it's good to ask, am I missing something? Am I not seeing myself in some way? And then there's a healthy conversation when you invite it. But if you're not invited to contribute your opinion, then it's better off that you don't, right? So people always say, I want a loving relationship, but what they really want is happiness, really. So we do these meditations to create love in our lives. And it could be love in familial relationships with your siblings, it could be with your parents, it could be with your friends, or it could be with a significant other. And so if thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge in the quantum field, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends a signal out, and the feeling is the magnetic field that draws the event back to you.
Right.
So if you're not in a place where you're in love with life, or in love with yourself, or practicing diminishing your emotional reactions to certain people or conditions in your life, and you're living in anger or hostility or judgment or fear, and you want a loving relationship, there is no magnetic field for you to draw that to you. And in fact, if you say to me, well, it's that person or that circumstance that's caused me to feel this way, then I would say, I mean, that person or that circumstance is controlling the way you feel and the way you think. And anything that controls the way we feel and the way we think, we are victims to, right? So most people are unconsciously responding to the conditions in their environment, experiencing emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress. Those emotions cause us to feel separate from our dreams. They heighten our senses, so if we can't see them, it doesn't exist. The threat or the danger puts us in emergency mode, and we can think positively about the relationship we want. We could send the signal out into the field. We could have pictures. We could remind ourselves of what it is. But if you're not drawing the experience back to you, because your response to the environment is actually weakening your organism, it's weakening your response, is actually weakening the body, then you will be, as a victim, more vulnerable to the conditions in your environment, whether large or small. And I'm talking about microorganisms as well. So if you wanted a true relationship where it was fundamentally based on this concept called love, now let's talk about that, because we practice this a lot in the work that we do. If you could truly begin to practice trading those survival emotions every day for elevated emotions, and you practiced opening your heart, it's a skill that has to take place where you move out of survival. You have one of two choices. Now listen, nothing wrong with feeling frustrated. Nothing wrong with feeling sad. Emotions are not bad. They're the end product of past experiences. And we can remember experiences better because we can remember how we feel. But when you have a reaction to someone or something in your life, there's a refractory period of chemicals that are created. There is an alteration in your chemistry. And if you don't know how to control that refractory period, and you allow it to linger for hours or days, that's called a mood. A mood is one long emotional reaction. If you keep that refractory period going for weeks or months, that's called a temperament. So I say, why are you so frustrated? Well, I lost everything 6 months ago, and I'm living by the same emotional reaction. If you keep that emotional reaction going for years on end, that's called a personality trait. So most people's personalities are defined by the emotions that they memorized. And so you would say, why are you so frustrated? Well, I'm frustrated because I lost everything 9 months ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago. Now, purely from an objective standpoint, what that means is I was altered in some way because I lost everything, and I haven't been able to change for the last 2 years. As a matter of fact, my frustration keeps me connected to my past. Now, Shortening the refractory period of your emotional reaction is emotional intelligence. A great thing to teach children. But if a person's going to live in frustration and that is their identity, and then they're going to tell the story of how they lost everything within that emotion, then they're firing and wiring the same circuits in their brain and emotionally conditioning their body to more frustration. And their identity now is connected to the past. Now, they will never create a new future holding on to those emotions of the past. Now, I have had many challenges in my life that have left very strong emotions. I understand them. I'm human. But at what point do you realize that living by frustration is, number one, not loving to you? Because those chemicals push the genetic buttons that will ultimately create a disease, number one. And number two, frustration is causing you to view your life through the lens of frustration, so you're going to look for more things in your life to reaffirm your addiction to frustration. And then you're going to hang out with people that complain and are frustrated too, and you're going to use each other to reaffirm your addiction, and that's called a culture. So then there comes a moment where a person finally says enough, and they say, no more. And they begin to look at how they think. They begin to pay attention to how they're feeling. They begin to become conscious of how they're behaving when they're in that state. And if you're observing those states of mind and body, it means you're no longer the automatic program. You're the consciousness now observing the program, and that's when you begin to objectify your subjective self. You're the observer of the self, which means you're no longer the addiction or the biology, the program that you're rooted in. Every great person in history knew this. We go to movies to watch people overcome insurmountable odds because we secretly believe in our own greatness. So, whether I'm talking to a CEO of a company, or to a prison inmate, or the janitor that's sweeping the floor in a school, everybody secretly believes in their own greatness. And when you realize that that frustration is keeping you anchored to the past, and you realize that there's a whole lot of future for you to create, when you can really reason that in your mind, you'll say, what is this frustration worth to me? And when you begin to break free of it, you will be liberated and new opportunities will come into your life. So again, study the knowledge that shows you that there are future possibilities. Nelson Mandela, he had a whole lot of reasons to hate. He had a whole lot of reasons to be frustrated. Had a whole lot of reasons to be judgmental. 27 years in prison, sooner or later he realized, I got to be creative. First 10 years of his life, he said, I'm never going to get out of here. I'm never going to get out of here. I'm never going to get out of here. And he was creating the emotions of hatred and anger. He's looking outside his prison after 10 years. And he said his heart spoke to him. And all of a sudden, it said, maybe you could get out of here. What if you could get out of here? And he started thinking, how could I get out of here? How could I get out of here? Ask the frontal lobe question. And all of a sudden, the frontal lobe begins to select different networks of neurons and seamlessly piece them together to create a new idea. And he says, I'm going to write letters to the United States on apartheid and anti-apartheid. So every week he writes letters and he sends them to the United States. A few years later, the United States starts answering. And then he says, wow, who's going to lead this nation? Who's going to lead this nation? Who's going to lead this nation? And then all of a sudden he started thinking, maybe I could lead this nation. Maybe I'm the guy that should lead this nation. And as he starts to ask this question, the most important question comes out. How would I have to be to lead a nation? Now this is greatness. And he transmuted his hatred into kindness. He took his judgment and turned it into compassion. He took his bitterness and turned it into unlimited mind. He walks out of that prison 27 years later. he gets to lead a nation. And so we are defined by our adversity. We are literally defined by our adversity. And if you can't take a past experience and transmute that emotion into wisdom, then you will never evolve in one lifetime. So there are people in the world that have it harder than us, that confront adversity every single day. And if you can't see that your frustration is still keeping you to the past, then you will only create more of the past. When you realize that that frustration can be transmuted into something else, and that you tell the story of your own transformation one day, now you're liberated, and everybody can do that in this world.